Good morning and welcome to Introductory Logic. Today we are looking at Lesson 15, Contrariety. So we are now talking about the categorical statements on the square of opposition and the relationships they share with one another. As we discussed in the previous lesson, there are 5 relationships. I have them here. They are contradiction. This is the one we talked about previously. Contrariety. This is what we're going to be talking about today. Subcontrariety, subimplication, and superimplication. Just to recap, contradiction is when they have opposite truth values. They cannot both be true, and they cannot both be false. And we'll look at which statements those are as we fill in the square of opposition. But today, we're looking at contrariety. So contrariety is if and only if they cannot both be true and they can both be false. So this is different than contradiction, and sometimes it's easy to get these confused, but contradiction, they cannot both be true and they cannot both be false. One is true, one is false. With contrariety, they cannot both be true. However, they can both be false. So we're going to look at this. First things first, we're going to fill in our square of opposition. I said this in the last lesson. I will always start with a bare square of opposition so we can fill it in. The more it's done this way, the more you see it, the more you hear it, the more it's remembered. So we are going to fill in the square of opposition up to everything we've covered so far. And if you've missed the other lessons and this is completely new to you, this is going to be confusing, but you can go back in previous lessons to start. I believe it started in lesson 9 or 10, where I start talking about these types of statements. So first, we're going to fill in the square of opposition. First is the letters A, E, I, O. Now the statements. All S, R, P. No S, R, P. Some S, R, P. Some S are not P. All right. Now we're going to look at quantity. How much of the subject is being talked about in each statement. Up at the top, we have all and none, or no. This is talking about the entire group of the subject, whether it's all or none of them. It's universal. It's talking about all of our subject. So this is universal. Down here, we have some and some are not. This is talking about part of our subject. So this is particular. That's quantity. How much of the subject are we talking about? Next, we're going to look at quality. Is something being affirmed about the subject or denied about the subject? On the left side, we have affirmation. So this is positive. Something is being affirmed about the subject. On the right side, we have denying. Something is being denied about the subject. So this is negative. Now, we have already covered contradiction, so I'm going to add the contradiction relationship. A and O contradict each other. One is always true and one is always false. They cannot both be true and they cannot both be false. We covered that last time. If you need a refresher on that, go watch that because I'm not going to get further into it right now. E and I also contradict each other. So these cannot both be true and they cannot both be false at the same time. One is true and one is false. So now we have filled in everything we know about the square of opposition thus far, and today we are talking about contrariety. Now contrariety, they cannot both be true. However, they can both be false. And the relationship, the statements that share a contrariety relationship are the universals. So this up here is our contrariety. Now I'm going to actually go ahead, I'm going to write contradiction here on this line and contrariety here. Okay, and obviously this is contradiction as well. All right, so contrariety, all SRP and no SRP. These cannot both be true, but they can both be false. Let's look again at our, I used the pilot. Let's see, where can I put this? I will just write it here. I used the pilot, men and pilot last time. So let's fill that in again. All men are pilots. No men are pilots. Let's see if this makes sense to us. All right, can they both be true? All men are pilots and no men are pilots. No, they cannot both be true. So that checks out. But can they both be false? All men are pilots, no men are pilots. Is every man on the planet a pilot? Or is no man on the planet a pilot? There is a third option here, and it could be that some are. All of them are not, and none of them are not, but some could be. So this is a better example of how we can see that all and no, they cannot both be true. However, they can both be wrong or false. So the third option could be that some are or some are not. So that shows how it is true that both cannot be true. However, both can be false. Let's do another example here. How much time we have? Okay. Let's do another one. All right, actually, I need more space here. Let me come back over here. Let's see if you can see here. All right, I'm gonna write it over here. Let's work on also translating. Students should always have homework. Students should always have homework. All right, I'm also going to say, what if in the argument it says, somebody else says, students should never have homework? So these are our two arguments here. Students should never have homework. I'm going to abbreviate homework with HW on this one. Now, let's check. First, we're going to translate this because remember, it has to look like our statements up here. It has to have a to be verb. It needs to start with all, no, or some. And the subject and the predicate have to be a noun. So what we're basically talking about here, students should always have homework. If we can think about what's actually being said here. What we're saying is more about how, like, the days in which students have homework. Either they should have homework on all the days or on none of the days. So I'm actually going to translate. I'm going to make days my subject here. And I'm going to turn it into all days are homework days, says person one. Person two says no days are homework days. And this is what they are arguing about. Let me show you our subject. So our subject class is days. Our predicate class is homework days. Days, homework days. So we have our subject class and we have our predicate class, and they match in both sentences. So now we can compare them because they match. So this one is an A statement. So let me say, I'm going to abbreviate all days are homework days. No, whoops, I'm just going to abbreviate days with D. No D R H. All right, let's check it here. Can they both be true? One says all days are homework days and the other says no days are homework days. It's talking about the extension, the entire extension of the subject. We're talking about all days. One is saying all and one is saying no. So if one is true, the other one cannot be true because they cannot both be true. It just can't happen that way. However, can they both be false? Should all days be homework days? No days be homework days? Is there a third option? Could some days be homework days? So this is why they can both be false. They can't both be true. So that is an example of taking a common argument or an argument you may be familiar with, translating it, putting it up here into our square of opposition, and then testing its relationship to see if one is true, what does that say about the other one? And yet they could also both be totally wrong. There could be a third option there. So this is it for contrariety. So contrariety is between the A and the E statements only. They cannot both be true. However, they can both be false. But if one is true, the other one would be false. It's not saying they can't ever be true. It's just saying they can't both be true at the same time. So far, this is all we have. That's it for contrariety. Next time, we're going to look at subcontrariety. So I will see you at the later lesson, and I hope you guys have a great day.